Hi everyone. So I am really sorry if you've had any trouble at all getting the sound to work on the PowerPoint. I thought it was just an issue with, us switching to a new system. I sincerely apologize. The more and more people that started to work on this, the more and more problems I realized that there were, and it wasn't just one localized person having a problem. So I am so sorry. It turns out that some technological mishap happened between last night when I recorded the presentation and now it didn't save properly. I didn't know this. I apologize. So here we are. I'm going to record it again for you. Again, please reach out if you have any questions. The purpose of this assignment is for me to give you this video lecture just as if we were sitting in class still. So there is a file that I had attached to the assignment tab along with this. You're going to basically watch this PowerPoint while taking notes, and I provided a note-taking device for you to use. So let's get started. Also, side note, please do not try and comment on Edmodo. I don't read the comments. I have them disabled for a reason. I don't even look at the approvals. So please do not comment. You need to message me if something is not working. It's just easier if it's all in one place. So let's get started. Okay, so right before we went on winter break, we had discussed cells and we categorized them in prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. So, eukaryotic cells, plants, animals, right? That's where we fit in. And we were drawing and we were labeling the parts of them, right? Prokaryotic cells are bacteria. They don't have much to them. Not really too much to say about them, but both prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells have similar characteristics. They are both the basic unit of life. That's what a cell is. It's the basic unit of life. So all living things are made of cells. And they grow and develop. They acquire and they use energy. They reproduce and they respond to their environment. So this 5 bullet point list that we have here on this slide is called cell theory. So basically all you need to know for that is that cells are alive and anything smaller than a cell is not considered to be alive. And since we're talking about things that are in fact alive, we have this hierarchy of life. So we start with an atom, build our way up, put a bunch of atoms together, we get a molecule. A bunch of molecules make an organelle. A bunch of organelles make a cell. A bunch of cells make a tissue. A bunch of tissues make an organ. A bunch of organs make an organ system. A bunch of organ systems can make an organism. A bunch of organisms together make a population. Multiple populations make a community, and multiple communities make a biosphere. So we are going from smallest to biggest, right? We're going to cover this extensively throughout the next slide. So first are subatomic particles. We have protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons have a positive charge. Neutrons have a neutral charge, and electrons have a negative charge. That's basically all you need to know. These are what make up atoms, which are the smallest unit or particles of matter. And again, they are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Multiple atoms, when they bond or combine together, they make molecules. Molecules can combine with other atoms or other molecules to make compounds. So this example down here with the gray and red blob looking things. So gray is going to be a carbon atom, and these red are going to be an oxygen atom. So we have CO2. This is carbon dioxide. And again, that's just a visual example. You don't have to know the chemical formula or this weird looking bond line structure form. It's okay. It's just there to show you an example. So molecules can get together and they can combine with other molecules to make macromolecules. Macro meaning large. The example on this slide are carbon molecules. So all of these pictures down here, these weird hexagon shapes and these pentagon shapes, are carbon molecules. There's a bunch of carbon atoms with hydrogen and oxygen. This first one is our friend glucose. That's what gives us energy. Other examples of macromolecules include proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. And they all help build cells. So when we ask what cells are made of, essentially they're made of macromolecules. Cells are also made of organelles, which are those little tiny organs inside the cell. We did a coloring activity right before we left on these. So mitochondria, lysosomes, chloroplast, remember our Golgi apparatus, our Golgi body, endoplasmic reticulum, cell wall, cell membrane. What else did we have? Ribosomes. This is all coming back to you, right? So these organelles are made of macromolecules. These organelles get together and they make a cell. So here we are. This is, let's see, what kind of cell is this? Do we think it's a prokaryote or a eukaryote? So we have a Golgi complex, we've got a mitochondria, a peroxisome, which we didn't really talk about, but that's okay. There's a plasma membrane, so a cell membrane, there's no cell wall. We've got a nucleus, an endoplasmic reticulum, and ribosomes. So what do you think this is? Do you think this is a prokaryotic cell or a eukaryotic cell? And if it is a eukaryotic cell, do you think it's an animal or a plant cell? If you guess that it was a eukaryotic cell, you are correct. And if you guess that it was an animal cell, you are also correct. So cells are the basic unit of life. Some examples, red blood cells, white blood cells, bone cells, nerve cells, and plant cells. If we get anything smaller than a regular cell, it's not considered to be alive. So organelles, not alive, right? Cells will get together if they're of a similar nature. They will group together and they work together to accomplish a specific function. Tissues. This is how we get tissues. Okay? So these cells clump together, they form a tissue, and tissues work for a specific task. So down here, red blood cells, your blood is technically a tissue. That's weird to think about because we probably are thinking of something solid or, but blood is technically a tissue. We've got bone cells forming your bones and cartilage cells. It is super important to point out that the reason that we are going to spend so much time talking about what things are made of, because that is how we can categorize things. And that is going to be the second half of our PowerPoint lecture today. We're categorizing things. And usually it's based on what that organism is made of. So, for example, these cartilage cells down here, right? If you were a shark instead of a person, you would not have a bony skeleton, you would have a cartilaginous skeleton. So where your bones would be, they would be made of cartilage. And that allows for a lot of different things. Flexible movement while you're swimming through the ocean, right? For us, if our bones were made of cartilage, that would not be good. We would not really get much done. Our organs would not be well protected. However, sharks are categorized because they have a cartilaginous skeleton. Because they don't have a bony skeleton, that makes them different from other kinds of fish. Do you see what I'm getting at? Do you see why this is kind of important? So, just wanted to point that out as we continue to move up our hierarchy of life. So, tissues are going to group together by similarities, and they're going to work together to create a similar function. So everything is building up. Think of it like you have a bucket full of Legos, okay? And you're just putting all these tiny little pieces together where they go. You're looking at the picture that comes on the box, and you're like, I don't know. This doesn't really look like the Harry Potter castle or the Millennium Falcon or whatever Lego set you purchased. And you're just kind of like going, you're following the directions, right? Well, eventually you get to whatever it is that you tried to build, right? So all of these little pieces are super, super important. All of your organs are super, super important. So they don't look like much just like by themselves, but they do a lot. For example, your stomach. Super important if you want to eat and get nutrients, right? Because how else are you going to digest your food if you don't have a stomach? Your heart. If you look at this cute little animation, there is an artistic rendering of blood passing through the heart and getting pumped to the rest of the body and to the lungs. Your heart cells and the tissues in your heart can only do this. Your stomach cannot turn around and be like, I feel like becoming a heart cell. I'm going to just do that. No, that's not how that works. Lungs, same thing. They take in oxygen, they expel or exhale carbon dioxide. So we're taking in nutrients, we're getting rid of a waste product. And your brain allows for all of those things to even happen. It allows for you to be sitting here listening to this PowerPoint. It's the reason you're probably super frustrated that you've been trying all morning to listen to this in the first place. But your brain is accomplishing so many things that you don't even think about it half the time. It's the reason that you're alive, really. So next, these organs get together, and now they've created organ systems. So real quick, we're just going to run through this picture. We've got our muscular system, and our skeletal system. Sometimes you hear this as musculoskeletal. Basically, it's how you move. Circulatory system carries nutrients throughout the body, gets rid of waste products. Nervous system, it's your brain, your spinal cord, and all the nerves. And basically tells you what to do, tells every organ how to function, responds to different stimuli. Your lymphatic and immune system is helping you not get sick, right? Respiratory system takes in oxygen, gets rid of carbon dioxide. Endocrine system. This is responsible for the hormones in your body that are affecting like how you grow and different things like that. There's some hormones that affect your appetite. There's a bunch of wild stuff. Your digestive system, the best part probably, because who doesn't love food? This is how you get all the nutrients out of your food. The excretory system gets rid of waste products along with the digestive system. I think we all know how that happens though. And then the reproductive system, which I will spare you the details on. So these organ systems are going to work together to do the same function. And by organ systems, I mean that there is a couple different organs that work together. So for example, the nervous system, I did say brain, spinal cord, and nerves, right? That's why it's a system. You have 3 organs working together for one job. And all of these organ systems come together to make an organism. These are entire living things, and they sometimes can just be one cell. Remember Johnny the one-celled boy? Kind of like an amoeba, right? Sometimes all you need is just in the one cell. Humans and animals, plants, not so much. During our development, we start out as one cell, right? Then over the course of time, those cells multiply and certain cells get told to do certain jobs, and that is called differentiation. Basically, each cell gets a job, and that's why you have certain cells and certain tissues and certain organs that have that specific job. Sometimes in amoebas, everything you need is just in the one cell. It doesn't need any more to function. It doesn't need any friends. It's happy being alone. For us, though, we are what we call multicellular organisms. Multicellular organisms and even unicellular organisms, there's going to be different kinds. So if you are the same as another organism and you guys can get together and have viable offspring, you are part of the same species. So humans are a part of the same species. We might all look very different and we might act differently and we might have different beliefs and whatever and be from different places in the world, but we are all part of the same species. As opposed to this beautiful picture of these bears, we are not bears. They're a different species than we are. Populations. So, the same type of organism or species living together. Us as a community in Waterset, you are a population. You're a group of humans living together in a similar area, right? So, the example that's on here is a group of the same species of frogs in a pond. So these are not in a pond. These look like they're poison dart frogs, which live in like the rainforest area. So this group right here, these three frogs living together, this could be considered a population. I would assume that there's more of them somewhere in the background hiding that we just can't see. Now, a community is all of the different populations living together in a specific area. So, going back to that poison dart frog reference, if there were blue poison dart frogs and there were like red poison dart frogs, that would be a community. There's two different species living together. Different populations or different groups of species can interact with each other. There can be competition and there can also be symbiotic relationships. So competition, you're competing or you're fighting over the same resources. So a lion and a cheetah might be competing over the same impala, right? They kind of live in the same area. They kind of have similar food desires and nutritional needs, right? They're going to compete for resources, land, water, food. Symbiotic relationships are when those two species are working together. Now, when I say working together, I mean that they're actually interacting. We can have mutualism, where one is benefiting and the other species is also benefiting. So both species benefit from the presence of the other. An example of this are those little cleaner fish that you see following sharks around. And after a shark eats, those little cleaner fish will like come and eat all the scraps up, right? They also have been known to eat parasites off of sharks and things like that, similar to those little birds that you see in crocodiles' mouths. And you're on, I don't know, if you watch National Geographic or if you've seen pictures, you know what I'm talking about. These little birds will just sit there and they'll pick out the food in between the crocodile's teeth. And the crocodile's totally chill. It's just sitting there basking in the sun, living its best life. And this bird is getting a free meal. And you'd think that it'd be terrified that it was going to become crocodile chow. But the bird benefits from getting a free meal. And the crocodile benefits because it's getting its teeth cleaned for the free. We also have commensalism, which is one benefiting and the other one is not really harmed. These examples are kind of difficult to find, so that I would like for you to do your research on, and I want you to read, because this is kind of the most it's not the most difficult, but it is the most interesting. So if you want, just do a quick Google search of examples of commensalism and see what you find. Parasitism are parasites. So one species is benefiting and the other is not. It's being harmed. So ticks, fleas, mosquitoes, gross little things like that. A tick living on some poor, unsuspecting creature is just sucking its blood and not providing the creature with any benefit, right? It happens though. And it's really all part of just how populations are interacting, because all of these different players, these different organisms, are part of the food web. So you may have seen this before, and you may not have seen this before. We are talking about 3 different types of consumers, if you could see on the bottom here, and how they interact with what we call decomposers, which is up top in the sky. So I am looking down here on the bottom left of the screen, or of the picture. High-level consumers, things that need a lot of food. Mammals, carnivores, meat eaters, or large animals. They need high levels of nutrients. They need to consume a lot of food. Primary consumers are herbivores and omnivores. Some eat only plants, some eat just plants and animal products. And then small animals. They don't need as much nutrients or food as a high-level consumer would, but they still need more than the secondary consumers, which are the smaller animals, the herbivores, the rodents, the reptiles. They don't really need a lot. Now we have our decomposers up top, which are insects, bacteria, and crustaceans. So those are kind of like cleaning up and living off of the dead stuff, which is kind of gross when you think about it, but everything is intertwined. It really is the circle of life. If you'd like to go pause the video and listen to the Lion King soundtrack, I won't be mad. All of these creatures living together, all of these organisms, these populations, these communities, are part of an ecosystem, which is all of the living members of a community, which we call the biotic system, and the abiotic parts, which are the non-living parts of the environment. And they can be large and small. So we have this little cartoon rendering, and we have a lot of different living organisms and non-living organisms. So if you'd like, just look at this picture, and I want you to see if you can find out as many biotic parts and as many abiotic parts as you can. I can see we've got some birds, we've got flowers, we've got a spider web, probably a spider, we've got those lily pads, the water, the mountains in the background, the grass, those other little bugs, a dragonfly, a frog jumping. There's a lot of different things going on. So this is just our list. We are going down this list, but we are really moving up the hierarchy, which is kind of weird. We're going from the smallest level, which are the atoms, and we're right at the ecosystem, which is highlighted in blue right here. So the ecosystems are areas where all of the communities of organisms interact with each other and their common environments. So we've got lakes, tundra, mountain ranges, canyons, soil types, etc. And these are just some pictures of different environments, different ecosystems. And all of these can basically be chunked into biomes. So those are large areas of the world with similar climates and organisms. If you look at the very, very top of the triangle, you have the cold Arctic region, which is the tundra, which would definitely be very different than the hot, wet rainforest in the bottom left of the triangle, or the bottom right of the triangle, the tropical dry desert. And all of these biomes, all of these living things, including the biotic and abiotic parts of Earth, is what makes up the biosphere. And if you look up here in the top right, We have the atmosphere interacting with the ecosphere, interacting with the hydrosphere, interacting with the lithosphere, which is a fancy word for the geosphere. And all of that is encompassed in the biosphere. So this goes way back into a couple units ago where we were talking about the 5 spheres of the Earth. Can you remember them? I named 4 of them. So we're only missing 1. Can you tell me which one we're missing? If you said cryosphere, you are correct. And way to remember your glaciers. So now we're going to kind of switch gears for the rest of the PowerPoint, and we're going to be talking about how we can classify all of these organisms. Now that we know kind of how things work in the natural world, we want to classify it as much as we can because that's how we're going to make sense of things. So we're going to use this method called taxonomy. And taxonomy is the science of naming living things or organisms, and you're assigning them to groups, which is called classification. Fun fact, taxis is the Greek root that means arrangement, and nomia is the Greek root that means distribution. Why do we even bother taxifying organisms? Classifying, right? Taxifying. I think I just made that up. Don't use that word. This classification system avoids confusion. So if I am from Florida and I meet somebody from Australia and we're talking about the same animal or the same organism and we use the fancy scientific word, we'll both know what the other is talking about. Even if I call something a dog and she calls it a dingo or whatever. Those are 2 different species, but you get the idea. Provides a single universal name to every organism on Earth, and it helps us understand how things are related, which you are about to see. So this organism has 5 common names: a mountain lion, a cougar, a puma, a catamount, and a Florida panther. However, those are regional names. So I know out in Colorado, you'd call this a mountain lion. I think in New York, we called this a cougar or a puma, and in Florida, it was the Florida panther. So in science, all of these names would be wrong because the scientific name for this animal is the Puma concolor. And that name is the genus and species of that organism. Now you're probably thinking, what's a genus, what's a species? Well, this guy with the fancy hair, Carolus Linnaeus, lived in the 1750s, and he was a Swedish botanist. And he came up with this method to categorize every single living organism based on different categories. So you start with the largest category, which is called a domain. So there are 3 domains, and they are the broadest. So you can have eukarya, prokarya, or archaea. This should sound familiar to you because we did talk about this before the break in the video by the Amoeba sisters, which I can link if you need it. So this system that he came up with is called binomial nomenclature, and that is how we have scientific names. It is using the last 2 of this bottom triangle right here, this inverted triangle. You see genus and species. So puma would be genus, species would be concolor. And those are just Latin words. Even though Latin is a dying language, science is probably the only reason that keeps it alive. So if we're talking about the taxonomy of human beings, we would be considered Homo sapiens, which means wise man. That is the scientific name for a human being. Homo means genus. Sapiens is the species name. So Homo means man, and sapiens means wise. And this is the entire taxonomy. So a taxa is a group, or taxon is a living group. Taxa would be multiple. So first we start with the most broad, which would be the domain. We are eukaryotes, right? So we have cells that have nuclei. That is what makes us a eukaryote. We are part of the animal kingdom, kingdom Animalia, because we are animals. Our phylum, if we're moving down on the list, is Chordata, because we have what's called a spinal cord. And that is a very distinctive evolutionary finding in different species. A common belief in science is evolution. It is one of the most well-known theories. There is a lot of evidence to support it. And what you find is that we all came from a common ancestor, and then we kind of just branched off. So something that separates humans and other animals is the presence of that spinal cord from, say, a jellyfish who doesn't have that. We are mammals, so our class is Mammalia. We come from the primate order because it is believed that our common ancestor were primates, or at least that we came from primates. And remember, a theory is something that is substantiated by a lot of evidence, but it is still a theory. So who knows? Maybe we'll find something to disprove it. Maybe it'll be you. And then genus would be Homo, and the species would be Sapiens. Okay, so what are domains and species? A domain is the least specific and largest group. And there are 3 domains. Do you remember what they're called? Eukarya, Prokarya, and Archaea. Remember the Amoeba Sisters video? Species can reproduce with each other, they possess unique features, and they have similar DNA. They are the most specific, and you're only talking about one kind of organism. So I know I've asked this before, but I know a couple of you wanted to go into marine biology, and that was your big goal. And I remember, if I remember correctly, Miss Lorelei wants to be a marine biologist. So let's say in 20 years, she discovers a new animal in the ocean, a new kind of dolphin, a new species, right? Lorelei would categorize that new species according to the list, starting with domain, then kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and finally species. Most of the time, when you get down to genus and species, if nothing else is able to describe your new discovery, you get to pick the name. And in fact, this happened a couple years ago during President Obama's presidency. Somebody discovered a new species of spider, and they decided that they wanted to pay tribute to Barack Obama, and they named the spider Apostachys Barackobami. That is a mouthful, but it is a true story, and that just goes to show you that there is a little bit of creativity in science, especially when it comes to names, because after all, if you did discover it, you can name it whatever you want, as long as you're following the guidelines and categorizing it according to the binomial nomenclature system. That is the end of this PowerPoint. So again, super sorry if it did not work for you the first time. I definitely apologize for that. Thank you for reaching out. I promise you we will get through this. Again, please message me on Edmodo if you need anything or have any questions, and make sure that you submit under the assignments tab your assignment by Friday, 11:59 p.m. Thanks and have a great day.